I never thought I'd be the kind of man who would sit down and pour his heart out like this. Confessions were something for priests or courtrooms, not for ordinary people like me. Yet here I am, staring at the blinking cursor, trying to make sense of the mess that my life turned into. My name is Daniel. I'm 36 years old, and until recently, I thought I had a simple, steady life. I was married to Laura for almost 12 years. We met in college, when we were both in our early 20s. She studied literature, I studied business. She was the kind of woman who carried poetry in her eyes, who could make even the dullest afternoon feel like something you'd remember. Our first years together were beautiful. We were young, broke, and completely in love. We lived in a tiny apartment with squeaky floors and a view of the brick wall of the next building. But we didn't care. We'd eat pasta 5 nights a week, drink cheap wine, and laugh until our stomachs hurt. I thought that was what happiness looked like. Life, of course, moved on. We got jobs. I climbed my way up in the finance world. Long hours, endless emails, constant pressure, but the money started to flow. Laura became a teacher at a local high school. We moved into a bigger apartment than a small house. We had stability, a circle of friends, and for a while, I thought we were untouchable. But stability has a way of numbing passion. Somewhere along the line, our marriage became more about schedules than surprises. We talked about bills, about groceries, about whether the leaking faucet in the kitchen should be fixed this week or next. Laura was still beautiful, still the woman I once adored, but the spark, it wasn't the same. And maybe I wasn't the same either. I should have been content. Many people would kill for the life I had, a loyal wife, a decent job, a nice house. But sometimes, when I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling while Laura breathed softly beside me, I felt this gnawing emptiness. A question I couldn't answer: is this it? I didn't go looking for trouble. At least, that's what I tell myself. Trouble found me, or maybe I left the door wide open without realizing it. Her name was Emily. She joined my firm about 2 years ago, fresh out of her MBA program, full of ambition and energy. She was 10 years younger than me, with sharp green eyes and a smile that could melt the most stressful Monday morning. She wasn't just beautiful, she was magnetic. People gravitated toward her, including me. At first, it was innocent. She was my junior, and I was her mentor. I'd guide her through projects, explain the unwritten rules of the corporate world. She'd thank me with that wide grin of hers, her hand briefly touching my arm as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was harmless. But then the conversation started stretching beyond work. She'd ask about my life, my hobbies, my marriage. She listened in a way Laura hadn't in years. Not because Laura didn't care, but because routine had dulled our curiosity about each other. Emily looked at me like I was someone worth knowing, worth admiring. One evening, after a late meeting, she and I stayed behind to finish some reports. Everyone else had gone home. The office was quiet, dimly lit. She laughed at something I said, tossed her hair back, and for a moment, the air between us shifted. It was subtle, but undeniable. I felt it in my chest, in my stomach. That dangerous spark I hadn't felt in so long. I went home that night restless. Laura was already asleep when I crawled into bed beside her. I lay there, wide awake, Emily's laughter echoing in my mind. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't push her out of my thoughts. That was the beginning. The slow unraveling. It's strange how quickly a boundary can start to erode. At first, it's just a glance that lasts too long, then a compliment that feels too personal. One day, you realize you're standing at the edge of a cliff you never intended to approach, and part of you is already leaning forward. With Emily, it happened gradually. A coffee together after a meeting. A shared joke that no one else would understand. A text late in the evening, starting with work but drifting into something lighter, songs we liked, books we'd read, stories about our childhoods. I should have stopped it early. I knew the danger. But I told myself lies, she's just a friend. It's harmless. Laura doesn't need to know everything. The truth was, I was addicted to the way Emily made me feel. She looked at me like I was still that young man from my 20s, ambitious, exciting, full of potential. Not just a tired husband who spent too much time at the office. One Friday night, after a brutal week of deadlines, Emily suggested we grab a drink. Just to celebrate surviving, she said with a grin. I hesitated for all of 2 seconds before agreeing. We went to a quiet bar a few blocks from the office. It wasn't fancy, dim lights, wooden booths, music low enough for conversation. She ordered a whiskey sour. I had a beer. One drink turned into 2, then 3. Her laughter filled the space between us, warm and intoxicating. At some point, she leaned closer, her arm brushing mine. You know, she said softly, you're not like the others here. Most people treat me like the new kid, but you actually see me. Her words landed like a spark in dry grass. My throat tightened. I wanted to say something responsible, something that would draw the line we both knew was there. But instead, I found myself confessing things I hadn't said out loud in years. I feel invisible sometimes, I admitted. Like I'm just going through the motions. Her eyes softened. She touched my hand, and the contact sent a jolt straight through me. You're not invisible to me, she whispered. That was the moment. The point of no return. I should have pulled away. I should have thought of Laura, of our years together, of the vows we made. But instead I let myself fall. We kissed. It was quick at first, tentative, but then it deepened, hungry, desperate, like we had both been starving without knowing it. My heart pounded as I tasted her lips, her warmth, the sweetness mixed with the bitterness of alcohol. When we finally pulled apart, breathing hard, she looked at me with those green eyes and said, I don't regret it. Neither did I. Not then. But guilt has a way of sneaking in. That night, when I went home, Laura was waiting up for me. She was curled on the couch with a blanket, half asleep but still awake enough to ask. Long day? I froze in the doorway, my lips still tingling from Emily's kiss, my mind spinning with shame. I forced a smile and nodded. Yeah. Sorry I'm late. She got up, kissed my cheek, and whispered, Don't work too hard, okay? The weight of her trust crushed me. I lay awake beside her again that night, staring at the ceiling, Emily's kiss still burning on my lips, Laura's breathing steady and trusting beside me. I felt like I was being torn in two. I told myself it was just a mistake, a slip, nothing more. I swore I wouldn't let it happen again. But deep down, I already knew I was lying. The kiss should have been the end. A moment of weakness, regrettable but containable. That's what I told myself as I stared at the ceiling that night, Laura's hand resting lightly on my chest. One mistake. Don't let it happen again. But the thing about forbidden fruit is that once you've tasted it, the craving only grows. Emily and I danced around each other for a week after that night. Our conversations at work were cautious, professional, almost forced. But beneath the surface, the tension hummed. Every glance lingered too long, every accidental touch felt electric. It didn't take much to break the silence. One evening, she sent me a message, Are we going to pretend nothing happened? I stared at my phone, heart pounding. I could have shut it down right there. I could have told her it was wrong, that I loved my wife, that we needed to keep our distance. But instead I typed back, I don't want to pretend. And just like that, the floodgates opened. The first time we slept together was in a hotel near the office. A sterile room with beige curtains and a bed that smelled faintly of detergent. Not exactly romantic, but when she pulled me toward her, when her lips pressed against mine, it didn't matter. It felt reckless, intoxicating, alive. I should say it was guilt that consumed me afterward, but the truth is, in that moment, all I felt was relief. Relief that the hunger had finally been satisfied, that the gnawing emptiness inside me had been filled, even if only temporarily. Afterward, she lay against me, her hair spilling across my chest. We shouldn't do this, she murmured, though her hand traced lazy circles on my skin. I know, I whispered. But neither of us moved. It didn't stop there. Of course it didn't. One time became many. hotels, her apartment, sometimes even the office late at night when everyone else was gone. Every encounter was a risk, every text a gamble, but the danger only made it more thrilling. At home, I became an actor in my own life. Smiles, small talk, dinners with Laura where I nodded and pretended to listen. She didn't suspect a thing. Or maybe she did, but pushed the thought aside. After all, I was always working late, always exhausted, always buried in deadlines. It was the perfect excuse. Still, the guilt began to creep in. Sometimes, when Laura would laugh at something silly, or reach for my hand while we watched TV, I'd feel a pang of shame so sharp it nearly doubled me over. But then my phone would buzz with a message from Emily, "Miss you. Can't stop thinking about you." And the shame would dissolve into longing. I was living two lives. By day, the husband with the stable job, the steady routine. By night, the lover, reckless and alive, burning with passion I thought I'd lost forever. It couldn't last. I knew that. Affairs never do. But when you're in the middle of it, reason doesn't matter. All that matters is the next kiss, the next stolen hour, the next lie you tell yourself to keep the guilt at bay. One night, lying beside Emily in the dim light of her apartment, she looked at me and whispered, "Do you ever think about us? Like really us? Not sneaking around? Not hiding?" Her question froze me. I had thought about it, of course. The fantasy of a life with her, passionate and free, unburdened by secrecy. But the reality? That was different. "I can't just walk away from everything," I said carefully. "Laura and we've built a life together." Emily's eyes darkened. "So what am I to you then? Just an escape?" Her words cut deep. I wanted to tell her no, that she was more than that she had become essential to me. But saying it out loud felt like admitting a truth I wasn't ready to face. Instead, I pulled her close and kissed her, as if that could silence the doubts. For the moment it worked. But the question lingered. And I knew it wouldn't go away. If guilt is a shadow, suspicion is the light that makes it grow longer. For months, I'd managed to juggle both lives, husband at home, lover in secret. But you can't play a role forever without slipping. And I was slipping. It started with little things. I'd come home late and forget the story I'd given the night before. Laura would ask what project was keeping me so busy, and I'd stumble through some vague explanation. Once, she found a receipt for a dinner I hadn't mentioned, 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine. I laughed it off as a client dinner, but the way her eyes lingered on me told me she wasn't fully convinced. One evening, as I walked through the front door, she was waiting at the kitchen table. No smile, no hug. Just sitting there, her fingers tapping against her coffee mug. "You've been working late a lot," she said. I froze, carefully setting my keys on the counter. "Yeah, big deadlines. You know how it is." Her eyes searched mine, sharp and tired at the same time. "I do know. But you've been distant, Daniel. Even when you're here, it feels like you're somewhere else." I forced a smile, leaned down to kiss her head. "I'm just stressed." "I'm sorry." She nodded, but I could see the doubt written across her face. For the first time, I realized how much I'd underestimated her. Laura wasn't naive. She noticed the changes. The way my phone never left my pocket, the way I jumped at late-night texts, the way intimacy between us had dwindled to routine touches instead of passion. That night, as I lay in bed beside her, I felt her body shift slightly away from mine. It was subtle, but it stung. The silence between us was louder than any argument. Meanwhile, Emily's demands grew heavier. She wanted more time, more honesty, more proof that she wasn't just some secret. One afternoon, while we sat in her apartment, she said bluntly, "You're going to have to choose, Daniel. You can't live in between forever." The words terrified me. Because she was right. And I wasn't ready. "I just need time," I said, avoiding her gaze. Her jaw tightened. "Time for what?" "To figure out how many more lies you can tell, Laura?" The anger in her voice startled me. I reached for her hand, but she pulled it back. For the first time, I saw not just the passion in her eyes but also the sharp edge of resentment. I left her place that night with a pit in my stomach. The two worlds I'd built were starting to collide, and I was standing right in the middle, powerless to stop it. A week later, Laura confronted me again. We were having dinner, take out on the couch, something we used to do for fun but now felt heavy. She set down her fork and looked at me. "Daniel," she said quietly, "is there someone else?" The question hit me like a blow to the chest. My pulse raced, my mind scrambled for words. I forced out a laugh that sounded hollow even to my own ears. "What? No. Of course not." But her eyes told me she didn't believe me. Not fully. That night, I lay awake long after she'd fallen asleep, staring at the ceiling again. My double life was cracking, the lies fraying at the edges. And the worst part? A sick, shameful part of me didn't want to choose. I wanted both, the safety of Laura, the fire of Emily. But deep down, I knew that wanting both was exactly what would destroy everything. There's a point in every lie where it stops being something you control and starts being something that controls you. I was there. Every day felt like walking across thin ice. Every glance, every word, every late-night text another crack forming under my feet. Emily was no longer content with stolen hours. Her patience, once tender, had turned into sharp frustration. One night, as we sat tangled in her bedsheets, she propped herself on her elbow and stared at me. "When are you going to tell her?" Her voice was calm, but the anger underneath was unmistakable. I sighed, dragging a hand through my hair. "It's not that simple, Emily. Laura and you what?" She cut in. "You've been sleeping with me for months, Daniel. Months. Do you think I'm happy being your dirty little secret?" The words sliced me open. I reached for her, but she pulled back, her eyes flashing. "I love you," she whispered. "But if you don't make a choice, I will." Her ultimatum lingered in the air long after I left her apartment. At home, things weren't any better. Laura had grown colder, her silences heavier. One Saturday morning, as I brewed coffee, she stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Who is she?" The words froze me mid-pour. I turned slowly, forcing a confused expression. "What are you talking about?" "Don't insult me, Daniel," she snapped. "You've been different. You come home smelling like perfume I don't wear. You guard your phone like it's classified information. You don't touch me the way you used to. I'm not stupid." Her voice cracked on the last word, and that hurt more than the anger. I should have confessed right then. Laid it all out. Instead, I lied. Again. "There's no one else," I said firmly, hating myself for how steady my voice sounded. "I'm just stressed, Laura. Work has been hell." She stared at me for a long moment, her eyes glistening. Finally, she shook her head and walked away. The sound of her footsteps retreating down the hall was worse than any shouting could have been. That night, I sat in the living room alone, nursing a drink, the weight of both women crushing me. Emily wanted me to leave Laura. Laura already suspected the truth. And me? I wanted to split myself in two and live both lives, but reality doesn't bend that way. The cracks widened. A week later, Emily showed up unannounced at my office. She wore a fitted dress, her hair perfectly styled, eyes blazing with a determination I recognized all too well. "Can we talk?" she said, her tone daring me to say no. We went into a conference room, the walls feeling too thin, the air too charged. "I can't keep doing this," she said, her voice trembling with anger and pain. "I need to know where I stand. Am I the woman you love, or am I just a mistake you're too cowardly to admit to?" Her words landed like punches. I wanted to tell her she was more than that. I wanted to promise her a future. But Laura's face flashed in my mind, the years we'd spent together, the life we'd built. "I need more time," I whispered. Her eyes filled with tears, but her jaw tightened. "You're going to lose both of us, Daniel. And when that happens, you'll have no one to blame but yourself." She walked out, leaving me gutted and breathless. At home that night, Laura barely spoke to me. She sat across the table, pushing food around her plate, her silence louder than any accusation. Two women. One pulling me toward passion and danger, the other slipping further from the stability we once had. And me, caught in the middle, drowning in lies. The storm was coming. I could feel it. The collapse didn't come with a whisper. It came like a thunderclap. Sudden. Deafening. Shattering everything. It happened on a Thursday night. I was at Emily's apartment, sitting on her couch with a glass of wine. She was laughing at something I said, her hand resting on my thigh, when my phone buzzed. Laura. For months I had ignored those calls when I was with Emily. But this time, something in me said answer it. Guilt, instinct, maybe fate. I stepped into the kitchen and picked up. Daniel. Laura's voice was cold, clipped. Where are you? My throat tightened. Still at the office. Why? There was a pause. Then her words came, sharp as glass. That's interesting. Because I'm standing outside your office right now. And it's empty. My blood ran cold. Laura, I stammered, but she hung up. When I walked back into the living room, Emily was watching me with worried eyes. What's wrong? She knows, I whispered. The color drained from Emily's face. What do you mean, she knows? She went to my office. My chest tightened, panic surging. I have to go. Emily grabbed my arm. Daniel, wait. You can't just. But I pulled away and ran. By the time I got home, Laura was waiting in the living room. The lights were off except for a single lamp, casting her in a pale glow. Her arms were crossed, her expression unreadable. Don't bother lying, she said flatly. I opened my mouth, but no words came. The silence between us stretched, unbearable. Finally, she stood. How long? Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried more weight than any scream. I swallowed hard. A few months. She closed her eyes, as if the truth physically hurt. When she opened them again, they glistened with tears. Was it worth it? Throwing away 10 years of marriage for her? My chest ached. I wanted to say no, that it wasn't worth it, that I had been selfish, stupid, weak. But Emily's face flashed in my mind, the laughter, the fire, the way she made me feel alive. And for the first time, I didn't know the answer. Laura shook her head, her voice breaking. I gave you everything, Daniel. My trust. My love. And you threw it away for a thrill. I'm sorry, I whispered. The words felt pathetic, empty. Sorry? She let out a bitter laugh. Sorry doesn't erase the nights you lied to me. Sorry doesn't take away the smell of another woman on your shirt. Sorry doesn't fix this. Tears blurred my vision. Laura, please. But she raised a hand, cutting me off. No. We're done. The finality in her voice was a knife to the gut. She walked past me, grabbed her bag, and headed for the door. I reached out, desperate, but she pulled away like my touch burned her. The door slammed, and just like that, the life we'd built together crumbled. I stood there in the silence, surrounded by the ghosts of our marriage. The couch where we'd laughed, the kitchen where we'd cooked, the bed where we'd once held each other. All of it tainted now, poisoned by my choices. And in that moment, I realized the cruel truth. I hadn't just lost Laura. I'd lost myself. The house felt different after Laura left. Quieter, colder, as if the walls themselves had absorbed her absence. Her things disappeared little by little, clothes, books, framed photos. Every day, I noticed something missing, another piece of her erased from the life we'd built. I kept expecting her to come back. To walk through the door and tell me she needed time, that we could try again. But she didn't. And deep down, I knew she never would. For the first week, I drowned myself in Emily. She was there, comforting me, telling me I had done the right thing, that now we could finally be together without guilt. She held me, whispered promises of a new beginning. But it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like exile. One night, lying beside her, I stared at the ceiling, the same way I used to at home with Laura, and realized the hollowness hadn't gone away. Emily noticed my silence. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. I hesitated before answering. "Everything I lost." Her face hardened, just for a second, then she forced a smile. "You didn't lose everything, Daniel. You still have me." I nodded, but my chest ached. Because it wasn't the same. She wasn't Laura. And the guilt of what I'd done weighed heavier with every passing day. Soon, cracks appeared between us two. Emily wanted joy, passion, a life without shadows. But I was drowning in regret, haunted by the look on Laura's face when she walked out. I couldn't give Emily what she wanted, not really. One evening, after another argument, Emily stood in the doorway of her apartment, her arms crossed. "You can't keep looking back, Daniel," she said. "If you're with me, then be with me. If you can't, then maybe you don't deserve either of us." Her words stung because they were true. I'd destroyed my marriage chasing something I thought would save me, and now even that was slipping away. At work, whispers spread. People noticed the tension between Emily and me, the way I avoided her gaze during meetings. It wasn't long before rumors reached ears I'd hoped they never would. I became the man who cheated, the husband who couldn't keep his vows. Respect vanished, replaced by pity and thinly veiled judgment. Nights were the worst. I'd sit alone in the empty house, staring at the door as if Laura might walk through it, even though I knew she wouldn't. I thought about calling her, begging, promising change. But what could I possibly say? That I was sorry? That I'd made a mistake? She had given me a decade of her life. One betrayal had burned it all down. The irony was bitter. I had wanted passion, excitement, a spark. Instead, I was left with ashes. One night, I picked up my phone and opened Laura's contact. My thumb hovered over the call button. But I didn't press it. I couldn't. I didn't have the right anymore. I set the phone down, buried my face in my hands, and finally admitted the truth I had been running from. I had lost them both. And this time, there was no going back. The divorce papers came in a plain envelope. No drama, no shouting match, just a stack of legal documents with Laura's name signed neatly at the bottom. The woman who once whispered vows to me now ended it all with a signature. I stared at the papers for a long time, my hand trembling as I turned each page. It was so clinical, so cold. 10 years of marriage reduced to legal terms, property division, signatures. Our life dismantled in black ink. I signed them. What else could I do? When I slid the envelope back into the mailbox, I felt something inside me collapse. Not anger, not even grief, just emptiness. Emily tried to be supportive at first. She said we could build something new, that this was a chance for us. But the more she spoke of beginnings, the more I felt the weight of the ending. I looked at her and saw not freedom, but the chain of choices that had led me here. Our relationship unraveled quickly after that. She wanted joy, laughter, a future. I had none of that left to give. I was hollow. One night, after another argument, she packed her things and left. No tears this time, no ultimatums. Just silence. I didn't stop her. And so, I was alone. The house became a mausoleum of memories. Laura's laughter echoed in empty rooms, her scent lingered in the closets, her ghost haunted every corner. I thought about selling the place, but I couldn't. It was the last piece of her I had, even if it tore me apart to live there. Nights stretched endlessly. I drank more than I should, scrolled through old photos I should have deleted, reread text messages until the words blurred. Sometimes I dreamed of her, reaching for me, smiling, and I'd wake up with tears on my pillow, the ache sharper than ever. Friends drifted away too. Some chose sides, others simply didn't know what to say. I became the man everyone whispered about, the cautionary tale of what happens when you mistake lust for love. One rainy evening, months later, I ran into Laura by chance. She looked different, lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted. She wore no ring. She didn't have to. The absence was enough. "Hi, Daniel," she said politely, her voice calm. "Laura." My throat tightened. You look good. She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm doing better. I wanted to say 1,000 things, beg forgiveness, tell her I still loved her, ask if she ever thought about us. But the words died in my throat. Because I knew it wouldn't matter. She had moved on. And I was still trapped in the ruins of what I'd destroyed. When she walked away, I stood there in the rain, watching until she disappeared into the crowd. It felt like losing her all over again. That night, I finally accepted the truth. There would be no reconciliation. No second chances. No happy ending. Just me, alone, haunted by the choices I couldn't undo. The betrayal had been mine. And the punishment was permanent.